Good afternoon and welcome to today's Google Hangout. And we're lucky to be joined by Richard Frankel and Kate Vale from Spotify. Now, Richard is Creative Director for Spotify. He joined the company in 2012, responsible for helping brands integrate their offering with the platform. Prior to joining Spotify, he ran his own marketing consultancy, Indigenous, helping media owners offer brands more immersive content experiences, and was also the first executive producer for Ogilvy Entertainment. He started his career in the music industry in the 70s as an art director for several major record labels. He's helped launch MTV in the early 1980s and has also directed many music videos, including Grammy-winning efforts for Sting and Janet Jackson. And just on my right here is Kate Vale. She's Managing Director for Spotify in Australia and New Zealand. It's fair to say Kate's got quite an interesting, or quite a good, strong digital CV as well. So her background in digital as the first Australian employee for Google, starting their sales operation from your living room, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
2002.
We've grown a little bit.
It's gone quite well since then, obviously, to I think the biggest digital publisher today in Australia, our biggest advertising platform. In 2009, you moved to take over the YouTube offering and to launch that in Australia as well. She joined Spotify in 2011 and has helped to build one of the largest streaming sites in what is now a very competitive Australian market. So thank you both very much for joining us today.
Pleasure
Thanks
to
for
be
having
here.
us.
I should just say before we go too much further that if you have any questions for Richard or Kate, you can actually ask them via the comment thread at the bottom of the page on the website or on Twitter if you use the hashtag AskSpotify. So I'll kick us off here. Actually, Richard, it's one for you. Now, we hear about creative directors for tech platforms that are becoming more of a thing. Facebook have them now, Google have them as well. What exactly is your role within that?
Well, my role is specific to the marketing of Spotify and to the opportunities that we try to create for brands to have great experiences on our platform. I don't actually work on building the Spotify product. We have an incredible team based in Stockholm, a very large team of creatives and coders who are working on that part of the world that we're building. But I work on helping make sure that the way we go to market and the way the brand expresses itself is in sync with what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, and do you sort of have much to do with marketers as well in terms of helping them to use the platform?
Absolutely, it's a big part of what my role is. We are looking at ways of surfacing new and interesting content around the music that we deliver to the audience, and we're looking at ways to try to find either great utility or great delight that marketers can help us amplify and bring to the audience.
Kate, do you have anyone sort of locally doing a similar job to Richard here? Is that?
No, we don't, unfortunately. That's why we've got Rich out this week.
That's why I'm local right now.
Okay, and I mean, how are you finding it, sort of getting marketers and media agencies as well to engage with the platform? Is that sort of a tough thing for you, sort of in Australia, first of all?
Look, I wouldn't say it's a tough thing. I think the best part about Spotify is that it's a music platform. So generally speaking, our advertisers and agencies love music and therefore tend to love Spotify. I wish more of them were on it. But I think that we're still kind of seen as the shiny new thing. So they are giving us a go, and I think it's kind of evident from our sales numbers and the number of brands on our platform that are growing significantly that brands and advertisers are loving us.
Obviously, it's a bit younger here than it is in the rest of the world. So, I mean, what about other markets? Sort of how do people use, these streaming platforms, Spotify, things like that?
Well, I think we're only a little bit more mature in the U.S. than we are in Australia. We've been alive there a year longer than we have here. In the markets where we've been going for 6 years or 6 years plus, like Sweden and the Nordics, and we are considered a mature streaming service, and that's all a relative value at this point. But we see big kind of multi-generational adoption of Spotify in a country like Sweden, where large numbers of people use the service and large numbers of them pay for it on a subscription basis too. So I think that it's we're in various states of maturity in various markets as we've started to grow this thing as a global enterprise. We're in 56 countries now, and most of them we've been alive in less than a year. So it's a big challenge to be kind of cognizant of what the state of understanding and education is about streaming in general and about Spotify in specific as you work in any one of those markets. And the other thing that has bears impact on it is getting to scale is what makes a big difference for a lot of advertisers who really are looking for that kind of reach as well as engagement when they buy. And so it's in those mature markets, we're able to speak to both of those things, and in the growing ones, we're looking for brands to help us get there.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Australia we're still kind of teaching the market about streaming. It still is so new and it's growing. But I think if at an agency level and at a brand level, we're still trying to get them to understand what streaming is all about, and also teaching them about a new ad product as well. Audio is quite new for them. Obviously, they can advertise on radio, but being able to track and being able to have a digital engagement component on a platform like Spotify is still very new to Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that leads on to the question of, what is different from advertising on Spotify to, using Kiss FM or something like that in, the local market here, music, radio, in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the creative challenges are that's a lot of fun when you start to break down and think about how would I speak to an audience in an environment like Spotify that's different from a traditional terrestrial radio buy, for instance. First thing that you have to kind of take on board is the notion that you don't need to scream at all to be heard well inside of an environment like Spotify, because you're already a citizen inside of an ecosystem that is an intimate experience. People are listening to you either in headphones or in controlled environments where they are the programmer, and it's their world that you've been invited into. So the idea of, and the other thing is when we deliver audio advertising to our users, it's 100% share of voice in this beautiful environment that doesn't have an adjacency on either side of it. So the thing that's on the other side of you is content. So you don't have to scream to be heard. And if you figure out a way to talk to that audience and be that trusted source that is telling them something that is as much of value to them as the music that they've curated for themselves, you end up with an incredible kind of, you're a good citizen inside of a social network then, and it's great.
So are we seeing sort of a new generation of audio ads coming through then, do you think?
We are.
Sort of a new renaissance in that platform?
We are. In the States, we've had some really interesting examples of advertisers who have taken even a brand spokesperson, like there's an advertising spokesperson for Progressive Insurance in the US, this character that they've invented called Flo. And she's in all of their television commercials and all of their traditional radio stuff. But when she comes onto Spotify to talk to our audience, she's hanging out. She's another user. She's another listener to Spotify, and she just gives you information about insurance in the same way that she might give you a tip on a new band or a new song. And the kinds of clicks we get when we watch an audience responding to someone who's taken the opportunity to think about the context of where that ad is running is pretty remarkable.
But also the fact that you can target your audience by demographic, and you can target your creative by demographic as well. So if you want a female voice talking to females on the platform, you can do that. And definitely try different creatives, and I guess you understand through tracking which messaging is working best for you as a brand. And you can't do that in radio in a traditional form.
Right.
So how was Spotify doing in Australia? You're what, 2 years old now, effectively?
No, we're 2 years old next week.
2 years old next
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, so we've got our big second birthday party coming up.
Right.
We're doing incredibly well. Our numbers are very healthy, very strong. I would have to say Australia and New Zealand have definitely stood out on a global scale as being two of the most successful country launches we've had. And that is in terms of take-up for subscriptions. So around about 30% of our audience subscribe and pay for Spotify every month, which sits above the global average of around about 25%. But Australia is definitely a key market for Spotify around the world.
That's interesting. I mean, just from that subscription perspective, from Spotify's point of view, is it better to have a customer paying to have a subscription, or would you prefer more people to be, being able to be targeted by the advertisers? Because obviously, when you take a subscription, you can't get the audio ads. At least you can get the playlist and so on, can't you?
I mean, I guess they work hand in hand. I don't know if your audience understand how you can sign up for Spotify, but firstly is through our subscription service, which is $11.99 a month. In Australia, and then there's our free tier, so pretty much exactly the same, except you get a limited version of Spotify on your mobile device, and you also hear ads on our free tier. So the way that we're funding our platform is through ads on the free tier, and obviously through the subscription model when people are paying for it. But our free tier is incredibly important to the business. It's the way that we fund our paid for model, and I don't think any other streaming service around the world has had the same model as Spotify and succeeded. So we've done it, and we've done it very well. But when you think about the audience and the people that are on Spotify, most of them are young, they're millennials, and they've never paid for music before. So in order to get them to pay eventually, we need to get them onto a free tier where there's no economic barrier to them trying our service, getting on, giving it a go. Once they set up playlists, they start sharing with their friends, they become more ingrained in the service, and eventually they pay.
You know, it's interesting when you think about the notion of a free tier that is a better experience than stealing music was. You know, that we've built this incredible facility for them to actually get the music they want to hear and know that when they're listening to it, the artist they love is getting paid for that. And it's, you know, the advertiser community that lets us deliver that on that promise. So it's pretty incredible. And I think that when we talk to the audience about that understanding, they get the value exchange that comes with being willing to listen to a minute or two of ads per hour in exchange for knowing they're doing that in a principled way. And as long as we can build the right catalogs and the right kind of utility and great ways for the audience to experience this music, and it's a better experience than piracy, we're winning. We're monetizing a user who would never have been part of that community before. So that's good.
You look at Spotify in Sweden, we've managed to reduce piracy by 30% since the time that we've launched over there, which is huge.
Are there any stats locally around?
Not yet, but we hope there will be some pretty soon.
Okay. I'm going to throw to Nick now, who's out in the newsroom. He's monitoring social and the comment thread for us. So Nick, have you got a question for us?
We're getting a few different questions here, guys. We'll start with Leaf Balls, who's asking, look, I love Spotify, and now that it's free on mobile. How did you make that possible, and how are brands reacting?
There we go.
We made it possible by a long, protracted, drawn-out series of negotiations with the labels. And they were smart enough to do this because they understood that the pent-up demand from users wanting that feature was just something that they could not ignore any longer.
But the flow-on effect to our business has been amazing as well. So you know, our numbers have grown substantially since we've had.
How long has it been since you were free on mobile?
December.
11th of December we announced it, and take a market like the United Kingdom where we were about 70% desktop and 30% mobile at that on the day before that. And every one of those mobile users was a premium subscriber because that was the only option they had. We're now at parity there. It's 50-50. And that's fast growth for a company like us.
I guess mobile's a really just common sense place to be, isn't it, for a platform like yourselves? And quite surprising that
platform and an audience like that. You know, the audience is active and mobile and wants to be able to consume this. You know, if you think about the use cases that people have around consuming music, it's an active lifestyle that drives so much of it. If you're at the gym working out, if you're commuting, you know, you're not going to drag a laptop around to all those situations. You need a use case that allows you to listen to music on a mobile.
It also provides a great opportunity now for brands to be able to reach Spotify users on the mobile device.
Yeah, so we're scaling that advertiser audience really quickly, and we need to keep focused on that.
Okay. I want to move on to the state of the Australian sort of streaming and music market more generally. It feels like it's quite a crowded market at the moment. You know, we've got an awful lot of players, obviously yourselves, you've got Pandora, and then you've got sort of more localized players like Mog, which I think is going to sort of turn in some sort of collaboration with Beats through Telstra. Again, another global player, iTunes Radio, and then you've got JB Hi-Fi and some of the local radio stations like RDO actually launching their own platforms as well. Is that sustainable, or are we going to see some of that fall away?
It's absolutely not sustainable. I think the Australian market was pretty attractive, obviously, to launch this many players into the market, given that we're the 6th largest music market in the world. We obviously spend more per capita than huge countries around the world. What we do see in most markets is that it's not sustainable, and it does happen in a lot of markets where there are many players initially. But what generally happens is that 3 or 4 players maximum will succeed. According to Nielsen at this point in time, we're around about 70% of the streaming market. So I'd like to think that in a few years' time that we'd be one of those survivors.
Do you think you'll be one of the sort of 3 or 4 there?
Hope so.
And is that going to squeeze out the sort of small local players? Because obviously, you know, where you're a big global, someone like Pandora, Apple, iTunes, you know, they're big global players. Is that going to squeeze, you know, your JB Hi-Fis and the like?
Look, I mean, I'm not the one to say who's going to survive, but I think for us, we need to make sure we stay ahead of the curve and make sure that we still maintain that majority market share. And the one thing that sets us apart is not only our free tier, but the fact that we are constantly innovating. I started at Spotify 2.5 years ago, and how Spotify looked 2.5 years ago to the way it looks now is completely different. It's a completely different user experience, and maybe Rich can talk to, a product or a new look that we released just recently. But we've evolved so much, and we've changed so much, and I think we're listening to what our audience wants, and I think we'll definitely stay ahead.
Yeah. How important is the look and the feel of?
I think it's very interesting that question, because I've been at Spotify for 2.5, nearly 3 years now, and the entire time I've been there until about 2 months ago, we've been in beta. We've grown millions and millions and millions of subscribers, and we've never gotten to version 1.0 until last couple months ago when we launched our new user experience. The new UX is gorgeous, and it's the same on every single touch point. So if you're on Android or a tablet or a mobile or a desktop or the app or the web player, it doesn't matter. You're getting the same exact feeling, and it's a big step forward for us. But we were restless to the point of continuing to innovate until we got this right. And now that it's there, we're starting again. We're going to continue to look and see how all of the new features are being adopted, and what kind of feedback we're getting from the audience, and how we can start to learn to continue to simplify the experience for users, to make not only the way we talk about Spotify simpler and easier to understand, but the actual use of the product to be simple and elegant.
And is it all sort of focused on the user, or is there sort of a conversation that goes on around, obviously, advertisers and brands and so on, and how they can be integrated into the platform?
Always. And also,
it's the majority of our audience.
Yeah. And, I think the other constituency that we have to continue to be very mindful of are artists. It's our life's blood. It's the reason we're here. And we have them as not only an audience unto themselves, but also as partners that can help us make those experiences for brands that much more exciting and relevant.
Okay. I'm going to throw it back to Nick in the newsroom. Nick, have you got another question for us?
Yes, we do. Robin asks around how is traffic going, or how is membership going in Asia, in particular the growth compared to Australia?
Yep, so about a year ago we launched in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, and we've just recently launched in the Philippines. But we are definitely looking at growing the number of countries we've launched in Asia, and I guess particularly important now we have a mobile offering, and mobile is so huge through Asia. I can't really comment on how quickly it's growing because we don't give away numbers, but I can tell you that we're having great success up in Asia.
Okay, and obviously that's a huge market, isn't it, with the mobile and so on.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in sort of how the advertisers are going that way?
I think it's interesting when you think about Asia, though. You can't think about it as one thing. There are so many different cultures and different states of maturity in terms of music consumption across that entire region. And so the thing that we are committed to doing before we launch in any market is get a really good understanding of what the dynamics are in that market from an advertiser and an audience perspective, and also from a catalog perspective. We won't go live until we've been able to really negotiate important local licenses with local labels.
Everything has to align.
Everything has to align.
Big process.
Yeah, and you just can't roll into a country and hit a switch and turn on a global catalog that you happen to have licensed everywhere and say, "Hey, everybody, enjoy Rihanna." As much as they will, if when we launch in Brazil, if we don't have 30% of the catalog as native Brazilian content, we're not going to be meaningful there. So we're really smart and careful about getting all that right.
And how are record companies sort of reacting? I know there have been some artists, obviously, who've said we don't get enough money from streams that they're playing and that sort of thing. And I think there have been a couple who sort of threatened, if they haven't already, to sort of take their back catalogues away from streaming sites. I mean, is that a threat? Is the economic model sustainable as it is, or does there have to be more money into the system to sustain music as a whole?
The only thing that we need to get to is scale, and all of that changes.
I guess
I really do believe that we're on the path to making sure that as we continue to grow this, it becomes better for everybody, for users, for artists, and for advertisers.
But we are already a very serious player in this space. In many European countries, we are ahead of iTunes now in terms of the money we're generating for the artists and the labels and the industry. And we're second behind iTunes globally. And you can see the numbers for streaming. The growth is huge, and we are starting to become really significant for the entire ecosystem. Last year alone, in 2013, we gave back $500 million to the industry, and since our inception, $1 billion. So $500 million in 1 year is very significant.
Yeah, and we're on track to do, significantly bigger numbers than that this year. So.
Because actually, I picked up earlier on today about a band in the US who, I don't know, sort of in some news articles it was said that they were rorting the system by putting an album completely silent. I
love
tracks.
This story.
So I'll just tell the audience here in case they haven't seen it. So this band basically uploaded 10 tracks of complete silence and asked all their fans to listen to them.
Here was the brilliance of what they did. They uploaded an album that was 10 tracks each, exactly a second longer than the amount of time required to trigger a royalty payment. And then they used their social graph to go out to all of their fans. They wanted to tour. They wanted to raise money to tour. I would buy a van. I don't know what it was for. But they said, listen, when you go to sleep tonight, put this record on repeat to all of their people. And so the record might have played 30, 40, 50 times for every one of those users during the night. Starting to mount up all of these royalty obligations we had. It was one of the best, most innovative ways of gaming our system that we had seen, and we kind of celebrated it and told them, great job, guys, and we shut it down. And then we put out a note to everyone else that says, don't even think about this, we know how to sniff for it now, we're done with this. But it was really clever what they did.
A bit of a lot of attention from it.
Yeah.
It'd be good for advertisers, wouldn't it, if they were coming in the middle of someone's sleep? A bit of subliminal messaging.
That's a good point. Think about it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of ads were served during that time that the band was not thinking it would be part of that experience.
Absolutely. And do you see that as sort of great creativity and actually something that a platform like this is enabling?
Absolutely. I mean, we love the notion of people being that engaged with us, that they're thinking about us that deeply to understand how to use us that way. And we do this with the kind of creative community on the tech side too. We love having, we'll sponsor hackathons, and we'll ask independent developers to come in and figure out how to crack a problem we have or a brand has, and build some kind of really interesting hack around our product that we would have never thought about from the inside, but someone looking at us from outside can figure out. It's a great kind of way of thinking about the tech culture and embracing it and letting it help you grow your business.
I guess that leads on to, how does Spotify look going forward? It obviously looks so different now from 2 years ago, and technology advances as it does. Is there anything that you're seeing coming up now, like
there is
wearable technology, that kind of thing, that's going to change?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the biggest ripple inside of our own world is something that we've done recently. We announced this at South by Southwest, which was we bought a company called the Echo Nest, which is brilliant couple of MIT PhD guys who built this smart company that has been able to look at understanding the meta tagging around music in ways that the labels have never thought of and that we've never been able to do on our own. We tend to think about our analytics based on what we can understand, which is how users behave. But these guys take a completely different look at that, and they look at a pop song and divide it into all kinds of really interesting taxonomy around that song, the genre. They don't just listen to the 4, 5, 6 genres that the record labels might give us for a song. They can listen to a song in 2.5 seconds and tell us more things about that song than we ever even knew were possible. And so when you get into that kind of deep understanding, data understanding of machine learning around music, and the other thing that they do brilliantly well is they scour the web every day, so they understand the kind of the genomic insight around the song, and then they look at all of the social impact around it. So they look at 10 million pieces of news and data on blogs and in Facebook and on Twitter every day, and they can understand the sentiment around something. They've got a very powerful tool there to help us build algorithms for discovery or for any kind of brand use that could be very interesting as well, around understanding an audience. I think I went off on a tangent there.
No, it's fascinating.
But that's a ripple I think that's going to make a difference technology-wise. Yeah. I mean, wearable tech, as everyone's talking about, this is something that's happening inside of our world that is going to have a really big significant impact.
And is that really around sort of helping people discover music
Yes.
and making the platform stickier?
It's going to fuel much better discovery tools for our audience. It's going to fuel much better insight for brands about. I mean, they're getting to the point where they're going to start to be able to make certain kinds of correlations between music listening patterns and lifestyle. That, with incredible accuracy, it's just going to be phenomenally helpful. And when a brand starts to think about who they want to talk to and how they want to talk to them, and what content we can surface to help them do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll throw out to Nick for one more question from the newsroom. So, Nick, have you got another one for us?
Yeah, we've got lots of questions here. We'll go to Aussie Hip Hop, who's asking, do you plan to partner with local artists in Australia to increase advertising opportunities through the platform?
Yes, we've actually done quite a bit of that already. Two brands that come to mind are Hewlett-Packard and Jack Daniels. We have a campaign live at the moment with HP through a tool called Emerge. And essentially what we're doing is bringing, through data that we analyse, we're bringing to the surface 10 artists that we think are going to be up and coming. We can see that people are starting to listen to them more in particular areas around the world. And what HP does is bring those artists to life, and they get people to vote on them, they get people to share their content, listen to their music, and through, I guess, charting all of that, we can predict, or we announce a winner of who is the next big artist, the next big thing. So HP is doing that with us at the moment, and I think we're about to announce our first winner of the first series, which is exciting. And also Jack Daniels, we worked with 3 artists locally. I think all 3 were through Universal Music, where we had sessions in the office. And yeah, that campaign is still ongoing at the moment.
And talking about sessions there and live events and so on, is that another extension that you're looking to build out with Spotify, and Spotify looks to build out generally?
Absolutely, that's a global effort. You know, fortunately we have this fabulous new office, and well, it's not new anymore. It's a year old in Sydney now, but we have a stage in that office. We have the ability to bring artists into our world and kind of capture what they do here, and we do that as well in London and in New York, and eventually we'll be doing it in Los Angeles as we build out that office too. But we want to have this kind of interconnected global opportunity to have live bespoke content made for us and with us by artists that matter to our audience. So it's a big part of what we're doing, how we're pushing. I mean, we're starting to do some very early experiments around how to get that content out to the widest possible audience, but we're getting there. There's great opportunities for brands there.
Nick, actually, we'll come back to you for one more. As you said, there were quite a few questions there on social, so you've got one more.
Yeah, look, we've got a commentary on the back end who's asking, does Kate think that the global online players should be paying more in tax or paying their fair share in local taxes in Australia?
That's a definite no comment. Sorry, totally. Yeah, not in line for this conversation, I don't think.
No, so we'll try one more, Nick, if there is one.
There is. Savo is asking, are you able to look at the issue of Spotify combining artist profiles with the same name and making it harder for people to access the right content, particularly for Australian artists?
I'm not quite sure I understand that, but artists can set up official pages, so we essentially give them a little tick, which means they're the official artist, and then people know when they're searching for them that that's the content they should be listening to.
I guess what he's driving at there is if there's 2 or 3 bands with the same name in the world.
Right.
Content's all being dragged in together at the moment.
I've never come across that as an issue.
One of the things that the Echo Nest is looking to do is they're in the process right now of scouring through all 30 million songs that exist across the various catalogs we have in the world and taking those situations and solving for them. So it may well be that there might be 9 Bob Dylans in the catalog, but only 2 or 3 countries where we have licenses for more than one, and we can easily figure that stuff out now.
Right.
They'll be able to tell us in 2.5 seconds which Bob Dylan wrote that song.
That sounds like great technology then.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Right, I think we better wrap it up there because I know you guys have got plenty to be getting on with, and I believe you have the Melbourne Partner Summit on Thursday. Is that right?
Yep. So we're having a summit in Melbourne, essentially just for brands and agency folk. If you want to come along, Rich will be speaking, sharing some great case studies from around the world. And then we have a Q&A panel and then some fun afterwards. I think it starts at about 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon. But if anyone's interested, they just need to email us at advertiseraunz@spotify.com.
Okay, we'll put that in the story as well, up online there, so people can get some details. But look, Richard, Kate, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.